future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition today of Kobylt and Friends. What's up with Kobylt and Friends? Kurt, thanks for playing that music and for the flag. Sad week this week of what's gone on in Orlando. First of all, with the shooting of that beautiful young girl who was shot by a fan. And then, of course, I think it was one day later, the massacre that happened in the gay bar in Orlando. And I personally have been struggling with this on many, many levels. And we have in studio with me today, John Kobylt from the John and Ken Show, renowned talk show host, and then some. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
We've been talking about it so much. We differ in our opinions like we always do, but we've been talking about this quite a bit. Needless to say, it's so horrific. I'm having a tough time getting my hands around this. I really am. But we were talking, again, at home about assault rifles and the types of guns that crazy animals are allowed to get their hands on, and what the moratorium is, because this person, if you want to call him that, was able to get these weapons just a week before that he went on his rampage, correct?
Yeah, he passed a background check.
How did that happen? Weren't they really casing him and following him, figuring out what was going on with this guy? So he passed a background check.
Yeah, because he had no criminal record, and he had no record of being involuntarily committed into a mental hospital. And those are the two things that will get you blocked from buying a gun.
Okay, so
there's a few other minor categories, but those are the two main categories.
So that didn't happen, and he went out and he purchased these weapons.
Yeah.
And then just a few days later, he busted into the Pulse nightclub and took out 49 people, and then 50, including himself. He was killed.
He passed the background check.
Right.
When you go to buy a gun, if you're buying the gun legally,
right,
they do an instant background check. 90% of the time, you come back clean that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And 10% of the time, you get a reading that says, wait, we have to get more information. Federal government has 3 days to get the extra information. If they don't do it in 3 days...
You get your guns.
You get your gun anyway.
Okay, well, they can't do anything in 3 days. They can't even give you a license in 3 days.
Well, this loophole had deadly consequences. If you remember Dylan Roof, the wacko who shot up that church, I think in Charleston. Remember, he went into a black church and shot up? Well, it turns out that he did have a criminal record, but during that 3-day background check, the feds never got around to figuring it out, because in whatever town he was in, he may have been in Charleston, but one city that he was living in South Carolina, they had multiple overlapping jurisdictions. So one jurisdiction wasn't connected to the criminal records of the other jurisdiction. So he did have a conviction on his record, but they couldn't find it right away. They needed more than the 3 days.
So he gets his weapons. Lucky break for him, right? He gets his weapons and off he goes.
Right, and he goes into the church and he shoots people up, and I think he killed 9.
Right. So what needs to be done on a federal level, and then, of course, on a state level, to make sure this can't happen? There's so many things that went wrong here. You have creeps like this crawling around everywhere that are maybe on the radar, but they haven't been arrested.
Well,
and they're being looked at, through maybe a set of binoculars, but that's really just not good enough.
Well, here's the limitations, because I had a long interview with Clint Van Sant, and he was a famous FBI profiler. He identified the Unabomber.
Right.
He also profiled who Timothy McVeigh turned out to be. Mm-hmm. And he has his own private company now. And he says what happens, most of the public doesn't understand the limitations of an FBI investigation. They get word that this guy is saying crazy stuff, right? He's saying crazy stuff at work. Okay. So they start to, they send in some informants to try to befriend him. Right, maybe a new guy at work, guy at the bar, befriends him and can't lead him on, but tries to get him comfortable to talk It's like, wow, it's crazy
That could
what's
take
going.
forever, though.
Took them 10 months.
Yeah.
They spent 10 months trying to get this guy to leak his intentions. He never did because maybe at that moment he didn't have any intentions to go into a club and shoot people up. So after a while, I mean, they have 1,000 open investigations into would-be terrorists in the country. Well, you can't do 24/7 surveillance on thousands of possibilities out there. It's impossible. So after 10 months, it was like, nothing here.
But look at all the things that have gone wrong. And what I want to do is try and figure out, how can we all figure out collectively, since we're all part of the government, aren't we? How can we at least get the ball rolling and make the whole process better? The process for streamlining the process for getting your weapons on the federal and state level. The FBI, they're casing, but they really are not doing enough.
Well, here's what's crazy about the.
Yeah.
He was on the terror watch list for a brief time while he was under investigation.
Right.
But then when the investigation ended and he was cleared, he was off the terror watch list.
Right.
The thing is, whether he was on or off, he still had the right to buy a gun. It turns out there's a big loophole that you could be on the terror watch list and you could still go out and buy a semi-automatic weapon. And now today they're fighting in Congress whether to close the loophole. The argument
Go ahead.
The argument against closing the loophole is that terror watch list has a lot of false reports on it. There are a lot of people on the list who have no reason to be there.
Somebody you're pissed off about, and there you go. It's a false report. I got you. But go ahead.
No, I mean, like Ted Kennedy, for example, was once on the no-fly list. It's that kind of stuff.
I almost ended up on the no-fly list.
Well,
Remember, because I had a 5-year-old at the time who needed to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
And the lady wouldn't let him up, and he snuck back anyway. And I ended up getting in trouble with
You
that.
got written up on a big sheet. I remember.
I was so frightened
And
that I would end up not being able to fly anymore.
Right.
Yeah, somebody like me gets on the no-fly list.
That
but
can
this
happen.
Guy,
Yeah.
Yeah, but this guy, sails through.
Right.
Okay, so you've got that going on. You've got the weapons going on. And then, the infiltration, in my opinion, mostly through social media. They just infiltrate, ISIS and the others are infiltrating into society and brainwashing these guys. This guy was born in America, albeit that his dad was a bit nutty.
Well,
you interviewed him too, didn't you?
Interviewed the dad, and the dad is absolutely crazy. And he does an internet TV show, much like this one, from a place in the valley, not far from here. And he carries on for hours about Afghani politics. He supports the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Right. And
the
then
guys with the black turbans that we started a war against.
And then he's professing that he has no idea how his son became like this. I
know he's a liar.
Of it. I don't
He's a crazy liar, lunatic, and his son absorbed his insanity, and his son absorbed also a lot of his nutty views.
Okay, but then here's another one. He absorbed a lot of his nutty views. Clearly, he may have been born gay, right? And his entire life has suppressed that because of what was written, or what at least he was taught was written to be a bad thing. So he suppresses this. He allegedly sees two men kissing, sends him on an insanity rampage. Goes and gets his guns against religion and everything else, and then blows these people up. So there's a whole nother one. And
I don't believe the story about he saw two guys kissing. That came from
don't really either. I'm not sure
that came from the dad.
Oh, forget it then.
But when you see, he's been going to the gay bar for 3 years.
Right. So he's been seeing a lot of people
He
kissing.
saw a lot worse than kissing.
Yeah.
So every 2 weeks he was there. And he was trying to pick guys up on the various dating apps. He was on Grindr. He was on Jack'd. He was on Adam for Adam.
Okay, another question. Was he trying to pick them up, or was he so angry with them that he wanted to do something with them and hurt them, harm them?
He was trying to pick up guys 10 years ago. He was at a police academy, wanted to be a cop, and there were a number of gay guys in that class, and they went to 4 different gay bars in the West Palm Beach, Fort Pierce, Port St. Lucie area. So this is 2006, and he tried to date one of the guys, but the guy wasn't interested.
Okay.
So this is 06. This is long before he got into this hardcore stuff.
Look at all these issues here. And then you've got a guy clearly, I guess, closeted. But he's probably ashamed or whatever because of what he's been taught.
Well, the strict interpretation of Islam, which he believed in, says you kill gay people. So imagine if his dad is preaching about that all the time.
How do we get around this as a society of looking at a group of people who are harmless and decent and just trying to go about their lives and are constantly being put upon? I don't understand.
Much of the animosity comes from organized religious teachings.
I agree with that.
And
I do agree
obviously,
with that.
hundreds of millions of people buy into teachings. So
Is there a way to change that? A way to change the interpretation of how people look at a group of people who really are decent, law-abiding human beings who really aren't doing much harm to anyone?
Not with devout religious people, not especially in these foreign countries where a lot of these immigrants are coming from. It is nearly unanimous in these foreign countries that homosexuality has to be dealt with by killing the people. In Afghanistan, it's like a 99%. Pew Research has done a poll in all these countries, and I think they looked at 36 Muslim majority countries. In 33 of them, at least 75% of the public agreed that this is.
Is it written anywhere why it's so horrible to them in their culture? Why? Does anyone just said why?
I mean, I've looked at some of the Islamic scripture, the translations. It doesn't explain why. It just declares it hideous.
Why are they so afraid of it? I don't understand.
I don't know. It
I
spooked
really
somebody.
don't understand.
You have somebody wrote it down. It spooked him back in the 700s. In the 700s, he saw something and got so spooked that he made up a story. And now, 1,400 years later, you still have 1.5 billion people buying into it.
So what is the answer if it's possible to somehow in the world and society to turn around that kind of thinking? I guess you can't, you're telling me, because
I don't think all cultures can mix together. We have a very open, much more tolerant society here than in most countries. If you are going to have this kind of immigration from countries where they believe that you kill gays, let alone embrace them, but you kill them, I don't know how that works. So, this is where we are.
Right. So you've got that, and then you've got the weapons that he was allowed to purchase and use. What's next going on in this investigation? I believe his wife knew. I don't know. Did she know, or was she?
She knew. He told her.
He told her.
He told her what he wanted to do. He told her,
So
she knew about the guns.
Okay, wonderful. I'll just take you for a ride down to the gun shop. I mean, maybe she was so petrified of what would happen to her or her son.
Maybe.
Did she ever say that, he would kill her and her son if she spoke out?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe, or maybe she was like the San Bernardino couple where the wife was just as passionate about it as the husband. I don't know if they had a kid too. So I don't know if they were a team. Mm-hmm. Or, he was just a crazy man and she felt terrified to contradict him. But under the law, she was required to report this, and she could get decades in prison for not doing it. Mm-hmm. Now, presumably, they're going to cut a deal in exchange for all the information she's voluntarily giving them. But nobody knows. Nobody knows if she has a lawyer. Nobody knows if there's a deal or what's in it. But she's cooperating and telling the cops things, and it's leaking out.
Just on so many levels, this is such a horrific, awful story. I just don't know where
there's going to be more of these.
Yeah, there are. Well, I hope not. Don't say that. I hope not.
Well, no, there are. I mean, they have 1,000 open investigations. And then there's probably thousands of others that they don't know about yet.
And then you've got our candidates who are running for president on both sides, pointing fingers, saying, oh, it's your fault. And the other one saying, look, it's your fault. And Trump saying, hey, Obama's more interested in me than what's really going on. And then Hillary hiding behind what it is that she's hiding behind, but still, at least there's legislation out there trying to.
The government has completely failed us on this, and
both sides. All sides.
Right now, there is no defense against this.
They
don't know what to do. They're not treating this like a war. It's as if
that's a good point.
There's been an invasion of soldiers from the enemy. They're in our country, and they're killing us here on our land. We're not treating it like a war. We're treating it like a crime scene. We send in the police department to clean up the mess at the end, and then we move on.
Well, there's a whole nother. Then, of course, the social media. The infiltration of social media, getting their message across, people reading it, getting excited by it, brainwashed by it, and then there they go.
In another time, the executives at the social media companies would say, we're not going to be a part of this. For the sake of America, where we're succeeding wildly, we are going to block all this from coming over, including the internet service providers. You can't get everything, but you make it as difficult as possible. But they don't. They don't do that. Twitter and Facebook willingly allowed years of propaganda to come through their systems, and it's just garbage. It's sewage, and this is the result now.
a lot of dialogue to talk about. John Kobylt from the John and Ken Show, thanks for coming in. I really appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
And we're going to let you go. Now we're going to go to a really quick break, and then we are coming back with actually a former FBI agent, not to talk about this, but to talk about a book that he's written, which is very interesting. So
Okay.
we'll be right back with him, and thanks again for coming on.
All right.
Are we back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Kurt, for that beautiful music. Chris, do we have you on the phone? Chris Voss? Are you there?
I'm here.
Can you hear
yes.
me? Sorry about that. I can't hear you. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks very much. I mean, you probably heard my previous guest. I know we're really not here to talk about what's gone on in Orlando, although it's a little difficult to do that. But a little bit about you. You wrote a book, and it is called Life is a Negotiation, correct?
No, it's never split the difference. Negotiating is if your life depended on it.
Exactly. Well, because life, in fact, is a negotiation. And a little bit about your background. You were policing in Kansas City, Missouri, correct? Then you decided
I
to
was.
join the FBI. And tell us, you were a hostage negotiator there, correct?
Yeah, I was a negotiator with the FBI. I was ultimately in charge of the negotiations on every international kidnapping of an American citizen anywhere in the world.
Tell me some of the high-profile cases that we would have heard of that you've worked on.
Well, as the media says, if it leads, it bleeds. And so most of the cases I worked didn't get a lot of attention because the people got out. We actually did work a series of kidnappings in Iraq in the 2004 time frame, which is a precursor to what ISIS has been doing. And we actually got them out of that business of kidnapping and killing Americans back then, which is something that we seem to be struggling a lot more with these days.
It's incredible, a lot more. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with the social media and the access that these guys have to communicating with one another. But when you're in a hostage crisis situation, what's your job and what do you do? Are you on the phone with these people? Are you in person with these people? How do you work it?
Well, there's almost always communication by the phone, whether it be a kidnapping or whether it's a contained situation. Depending upon the case, I'll either be handling the negotiations personally, talking with them myself. In many cases, I'm coaching somebody that's doing it. I mean, really, what I did for the FBI was an international negotiation coach. I coach people all over the world in high-pressure negotiations.
What's the number one thing that you tell them to do? Obviously, to get the guy calm, but how do you do that when in such a situation like that?
That's a great question. I mean, and the question also becomes like, are people in that kind of a crazy situation, is that applicable to what I do in real life, in my personal negotiations? And one of the most powerful things you can really do is just first take a step back and let a little bit of space to get into the negotiation.
How do you do that?
Like,
how would you do that? As you're talking to them, or you just let the situation unfold? What are you saying?
Well, space might just be 3 seconds of silence.
I see.
And if you can draw a line between the distinction between understanding and agreement, if I can understand where you're coming from without agreeing to it in any way, that you can develop an understanding with literally anybody on the planet.
So
what you want to do is you express a couple things that shows that you understand, and it's understand them emotionally. And it usually catches them so off guard that they want to hear some more of what you have to say.
Because they probably feel that no one's been listening to them, that everyone's told them that they're crazy, and I suppose understandably so, but you may be the first person who's actually taken the time to listen. So it I guess, disarms them in a way, correct?
You've got it exactly right. They are so used to not being listened. And on a day-to-day basis, one of the unfortunate universal conditions of human nature, whether you're in Iraq or whether you're in Burbank, we don't do a good job listening to each other. So once somebody does get listened to, it catches them off guard, and they want to talk with you more.
I believe you're right. I mean, look at the case. I know we're really not here to talk too much about what's gone on in Orlando. We're focusing a little more on the book that you've written. But in this case, this is a situation where one side is constantly pointing at the other side, and no matter what, all sides never really see someone else's point. Of course, you can't really see the point. In this case, this killer was a monster. But perhaps maybe 10 years ago, if he had someone to talk to about his feelings, or someone to talk to about his teachings and what he believed that his religion taught him, then perhaps we wouldn't be in this situation today. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and it sounds so absurd, but there's an awful lot to what you say, because we began to look in hostage negotiation as, violence is a form of communication. And people are communicating via violence because they don't know a way to communicate it in any other way. Mm-hmm. Now, there's some evils that are just going to occur, unfortunately. There's a reason law enforcement has deadly force. I mean, there are some instances where law enforcement has to intervene with deadly force. I don't want to rule that out. I just want to minimize the amount of times that I have to intervene with deadly force. And if I can steer them in another direction with my words, it's another weapon to use in stopping evil, if you will.
Now, you talk in your book about 9 principles to become more persuasive. What are they?
Well, there's 9 specific techniques that some of them are stuff that we know in everyday conversations, such as paraphrasing and summarizing.
Give me an example. For example, and you say, look, you can use this in anything, whether you're negotiating with your partner who might be like a pain in the ass that day, and you're thinking, all right, this isn't working. Let me figure out a better way to negotiate with him or her. Or if you're trying to buy a car, or you're just trying to negotiate with your boss or something, there's always a better way, right? So how would you do that so that you can, in fact, win your argument?
Well, one of the simplest ways, and people hate that it's so simple, is a negotiation technique that's called a mirror. And it's just repeating the last 1 to 3 words of what someone has just said.
So give me an example. I'm really angry with you, Chris. Go.
Angry with me? And I'd say it like that as a question, and you'd want to expand on what you just said. Because first of all, by me doing that, you realize that I was paying attention to what you said.
Right.
And if you're telling me that you're angry with me, you actually have a message you want me to get through to me. You want me to hear it. And so the minute I indicate to you that maybe my brain is opening to listening to what you have to say, you're going to want to go on. Okay,
so number 1, to listen and respond with a question. I like that. Hold up the mirror. Give me another one.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then I might just kind of try to recognize what it is that's driving you, and I might say, it sounds to me like I've really disappointed you in some way.
These are also good tactics when you're dealing with a kid. I have teenagers, and sometimes I'll go in the room and say, well, what do you mean? I don't know. And someone said, no. You just sort of very calmly say, I am sorry you're disappointed with that. And it does take them off guard, I will tell you. There is something to this. And then
Thank
what?
you. I hope so.
Well, I hope so. Okay, so that's that. But you can definitely use this with teenagers. I mean, as an FBI negotiator, I would have to say you're probably somebody who should be working with teenagers. I don't know if you have kids, but this is a really good one. Give me another one. So then, in other words, some sympathy, some empathy for the person.
Yeah, if you can draw a distinction between sympathy and empathy.
Mm-hmm. And then, right, there's a difference.
If you define empathy just as a recognition of what's driving the other person.
Right.
Again, what you've done with that is you're not agreeing with it, you're not opposing it. And it's kind of a narrow definition, but it's really, really powerful. And then what we did in the book, we call it tactical empathy, because I've done this with enough people in enough situations. We began to see the patterns that you're going to look for. And, when you said you're angry with me, the pattern that I know in emotions is I know anger is a result of something else. And it's probably a result of some sort of disappointment.
Okay, so you and I, let's say we're arguing again over, I don't know, the dishes. I'm angry with you, Chris. And then you came back with a question. And then you say, why? And I'd say, the dishes. And you're right, it's probably not just the dishes, it's probably an accumulation of lots of things, dishes and everything else. So then knowing that, you can almost assess the situation better too, right? But you really have to have the emotional intelligence to be able to step back and do that. A lot of people just are so overly emotional, that takes over, you know?
Yeah, you make a good point, and one of the questions there is how much emotional intelligence do I have, and can I bring it along?
Yeah.
And the great answer to that actually is, first of all, we're all blessed with some, and the big difference between emotional intelligence and IQ or intellectual intelligence is that your IQ is fixed. It's like your height. You're only going to get so high, and no matter how many push-ups you do, no matter how much milk you drink, you're not going to get any taller.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional intelligence, on the other hand, is something that we can continue to develop throughout our lives. It tends to be a little perishable, so when we ignore it like to use the overused cliche of muscle, it atrophies a little bit, but the strength in it comes back very quickly. And the data out there is now that we can continue to build on our emotional intelligence right up to our mid-80s.
Give me another one. So you're holding up a mirror, you're asking a question, you're holding up a mirror, you're calmly responding to what the person says they're pissed off about. Then what? Keep going.
Well, then it's going to be where you want to get some great collaboration is you're going to ask either a form of a how or a what question. And
so how can I make this better, or how can I help you, or what do you say?
Well, the greatest how question in the world is, how do you want me to handle this in the future? Or the best way, our number one way to say no, actually, when we're in any negotiation, we're with an international terrorist, or one of my students from USC used this question when he was recently negotiating a lease for a luxury home in Hollywood Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, how am I supposed to do that when they had a really high price?
What did you tell him?
Now,
That's a good point.
Well, and so what happens with how am I supposed to do that, which is the first and best way to say no, we all imagine that the other person is going to say, well, because you have to, because I said so.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the answer that you want to get, because that tells you that you've gone as far as you can on that issue. And the other person is not shutting down the conversation. They're just, in their own way, saying, this is as far as you can go here. What happens in reality also is you usually have to ask it 2 or 3 times. And the first time in this lease negotiation for this home, when my student said, how are we supposed to pay that to the realtor, they dropped their terms, they dropped the price, and they expanded the terms. And the second time, much later in the conversation, when he said it again, the realtor said, well, look, if your client wants to live here, you're going to have to pay it. Which is, at that point in time, he knew that he'd gone as far as he could on that term.
Yeah, I mean, I was just negotiating for a car. One thing that irritates me is when somebody poses a question back, when I say, well, that's just too high. And then I say, well, then they say, well, what would you like to pay? It's like, oh, knock it off. Sometimes it just gets me angry. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
But, and I guess here's another one. Be prepared to walk away. Or no, I guess you cannot do that in a hostage situation, though. You can if you're buying a car or leasing a home, but in a hostage situation, you can't. You got to see it through the end.
Well, there's a difference between giving off the vibe of whether or not you walk away and actually walking away. And I can break off communications in a hostage situation. I can hang up the phone. There was a great move in the movie The Negotiator with Kevin Spacey and Samuel Jackson that came out a number of years ago. Some of that was accurate, some of it was not. But there was a great point in that point in time when the negotiator, being played by Kevin Spacey, hangs up on Samuel Jackson, and everybody looks shocked. And he looks around and says, "Oh, he'll call back," and he did. So you can break off communications without breaking off the negotiation.
So, give me a couple of others that you've used in a negotiation in a setting that you've worked in, that have been very powerful, that in fact have turned around a situation.
Well, there was a case of a serial kidnapper, a serial killer that we on a kidnapping we were working in the Philippines, and the negotiator I was coaching used a great combination, and it's called, I like to think of it as sort of a time transport question. It's a combination of when and what.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to confront someone with a point in time, either in the future or the past, and you started out by saying when. So when this happens, what's going to happen? And in this kidnapping, the negotiator said, when we run out of money paying you to take care of our victim every day, what's going to happen? And it was a really long silence because we'd completely gained the upper hand in this negotiation, and the killer on the other side didn't know it. And he said, well, everything's going to be okay, which meant he just promised not to kill our victim. I used the same question in a negotiation with my boss because he was trying to pull back permission for something that he'd given me permission for previously because he was mad at me. And instead of me saying to him, hey, why'd you approve this in the first place? By the way, why is a really bad question to ask anybody because it makes it offensive. All I said was, when you initially approved this, what did you have in mind? And it made him feel really powerful. Asking that kind of a question really frames people. It restricts them in a way that actually makes him feel powerful, so it catches him off guard. And instead of taking away permission to go to the seminar that I wanted to go to, he's kind of sat back in his chair and he steepled his hands, which is what people always do when they feel really powerful and confident. And he said, hey, just make sure you brief everybody when you come back. So the when, what, time transport question is a great technique to use on people.
Chris Voss wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. Thank you so much for being on with us today. I really do appreciate it. Will you come back again? Because I'd actually like to get a lot of your thoughts on what you think went on in Orlando. I know you didn't really want to talk about that too much, but I mean, a lot more is going to be coming out on how the FBI negotiators, on how the police and how they handled this situation from the outside before they stormed in there, Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you're a fantastic host. I'd love to come on anytime. It's really great talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much. Boy, you're terrific. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Chris Voss, for being on. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
I tell you, Kurt, doing a show like today is really difficult because, you can't keep the entire hour solemn. And I actually had someone scheduled to come on, and I'm thrilled, actually, that she's going to still be with us today, Kelly Emberg. Is she on the line by chance?
I'm right here.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? Talk about switching gears. I mean, everyone knows what's been going on down in Orlando. By the way, where are you calling us from? Where are you?
I'm in Rancho Santa Fe in San Diego.
Okay,
area.
So you're down in San Diego.
In California.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say, I mean, I'm sure that you've been riveted to what's been going on down there as well. And there's so many. Pardon, go ahead.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead. I'm sure that you've been keeping track, like everybody, of what's going on down in San Diego. Down in Orlando. It has been so riveting. I've been having a tough time sleeping just because on so many levels, everything from just on so many levels, it's just really touched me. So thanks for being on today. I really appreciate it. And for following our FBI negotiator, because that's never easy coming on right after a guy like him. But you fascinate me. I've been watching your career from when I was younger as well. You are so gorgeous. My God.
The lights and the makeup and the hair and all that help a lot.
Look, how come every model always says that? I modeled, but I never was a Kelly. Whoa. But I was never a Kelly Emberg. So there's got to be difference between your lighting and my lighting. But thank you for being so humble. But you really are a beautiful, beautiful lady.
You're
Just
so
incredible.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're a busy girl, though. You've been a supermodel. You are an interior designer, correct?
Correct.
As well. Mom of 3. How old are your kids now?
Oh, my daughter, gosh, she's going to be 29, and she could be so mad that I told everyone. No, not really. But and then I have a 14-year-old and a 14-and-a-half-year-old, and then my son just turned 18.
Yeah, but you were like,
Huh?
super young when you had Ruby, right? I mean, and of course, Ruby's dad is Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart, and what's super young?
I'm
These
just
days,
I'm just saying you were young. I'm trying to make
28.
you even younger. So if she's 29, maybe you were 12 or 14 or 15 when you had her. I'm just saying.
Of course I was.
Exactly. That's all. But you've had such a distinguished career, raised 3 kids. We all know that's not easy. I've got 3 kids too. So That's a whole mouthful right there, and they're teenagers, and I've got 3 boys, so that's never easy. But I love what you do, and I loved reading about your story, how you first got into gardening to get away from the madness of New York. Now, I worked in New York as well, and I was modeling there, so I know how crazy it is. Again, not nearly on your level. And then you bought a farm in Pennsylvania, correct?
Well, I bought a house, not so much a farm. I had enough land that I could start growing.
Right. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, so you started growing vegetables. Tell me about that. And then this has been a lifelong love of yours, and now you're trying to pass it on to everybody else. So tell me your journey.
Oh, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I was, like you said, I started at 30. I decided to go back to school. I went to UCLA and became an interior designer.
Love that.
Studied for years and worked with Michael Smith, who's a real well-known designer. He makes all kinds of products now. But and I did that, and then started doing my own stuff. And then when I met my husband, I lived in LA. I moved to Rancho Santa Fe, and we both sold our houses and bought a beautiful house in Fairbanks. And it had all these acres, and so I renovated the house, and I started reblooming these orchids. And because Mike, my husband's a little OCD, and so he loved orchids, so he'd buy them, but then he'd throw them away after they bloomed. So I figured out online how to do it, and from there, he wanted to buy me a greenhouse because he couldn't stand the fact these orchids would be like in the laundry room.
I love that. So you guys built a greenhouse out back, right, in between the trees?
What?
You built a greenhouse in between your trees.
So he convinces me, and I didn't want one. The funny thing is, I fought him. I'm like, I don't want a greenhouse. I'm doing interior design. I had a job here. I was doing the house. I finished the house, and I was just a busy mom and all those things that go with being a mom. But he convinced me to get a greenhouse. Well, meanwhile, the orchids started to die in the greenhouse, and I'm like, I got to do something with this greenhouse, so I'll start planting vegetables. And I excavated an area. And I pulled some broken concrete, not myself, but I got my gardeners to go get some broken concrete out of landfills and made these beautiful retaining walls that look amazing, by the way. Everyone should do that. It's a good trick, and it's free.
What, with the broken concrete, and you lay it on the side, right?
Well, you lay them on top of each other, cause if you have a hill and you feel like you can't really garden there, you can. You just make terraced beds.
So
and you
smart.
make little walls that are kind of winding. They're quite beautiful. You can go to my website and see them if you'd like. I mean, I always post everything. Or Instagram, I might have a few pictures as well. And so I had that done and then filled it full of earth and then put a watering system in, the wrong kind, by the way. And I went to Home Depot, purchased some starts, like 6-packs, and threw them in. I threw my favorite things in, tomatoes. I love tomatoes. I love spicy peppers, all kinds of chili peppers. I put queen in, corn in, I put all kinds of squash, and I read the directions, and then I said, okay, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to plant them closer together, which was not what I should have done. But even though I did it wrong to begin with, I got a bumper crop of everything. And my fridge was full of veggies. I couldn't believe that I could do it, and it really opened my world up, like, wow, I can do this. And before, food was something that I didn't understand. I didn't understand what organic meant. I didn't understand anything. And the fact that I could grow it was so powerful for me. So that's got me all started about, wanting to change the world one seed at a time.
No, I think that's brilliant.
It's
funny. I live in Los Angeles, and I have a little mini teeny weeny patch where I grow stuff too. And no matter what I do, I put it close together. I grow it when you're not supposed to. It just sprouts up. And I love to grow corn because it looks really cool. People will come over and go, you've got corn in your yard? And I'm like, uh-huh. Because I get it.
I love that you're growing.
Oh,
I love that.
Oh, yeah. I just did it.
Other people doing it.
Well, because it's a fun thing to do when you have little kids, right? It's like, hey, let's see if we can grow some, carrots and look at the strawberries. And I just throw it all together. And no matter what I do, it grows. But, there's a better way to do it. It's a better system. And I'm not organized about it. It just happens to grow, whatever it is I'm doing. And I'm like,
the thing about growing too, which I found in every season, when I say season, because there's warm and cool and in between, by the way. I'm sorry, that's my cell and someone's trying to call me. So let me just...
tell them you're busy.
He should not be calling me right now. It's my husband.
Yeah.
But, every season's different, and every season you learn something different. And initially, like when I first started growing my veggies, I did it all wrong. I didn't know how to stake my tomatoes. So I was out there all the time, oh my gosh, it's grown a foot overnight. And I have to, make sure I tie everything up so it doesn't break. And
Right,
I
and get
spent
too
a lot of time
heavy.
gardening.
Right, and then it gets
And
too
that,
heavy and it ends up on the ground, and then the animals eat
yeah,
it. That's a tough
yeah,
one. The
all kinds
animals
of
will
things.
eat it. That's always a tough one. What do you do with the animals? You can.
Well, but the thing is, and real quick, I just wanted to say that you get better at it. Some things work, some things don't. Sometimes you have animals, sometimes you don't. One time I had a deer, and I did not know what to do, honestly. I literally prayed that it would die. And, I mean, that sounds terrible, but one deer was completely devouring my entire garden. And I was like, what do I do with this thing? How do I get rid of it? And I tried to scatter that deer away, and and you just find ways. Well, unfortunately, that deer got tangled up in a topiary I had. It's like kind of awful topiary that I would grab. I had put it aside because I had beans growing up it, and I was going to, redo the land and fortify it with, nourished, I don't know, worm castings and chicken manure and all that. And I put it aside, and the deer must have gotten spooked either by a coyote or something, ran through, got trapped in it, and died.
Oh no,
I mean,
Kelly.
and I was so devastated because I literally had said in my head, like the day before, I hope a coyote gets this deer. How terrible is that?
Oh
and
no.
then
At least you're honest about it, though.
And a coyote ate it, and I was just so mortified. But, my gardens grew, but I felt terribly guilty. I thought I did it even though I didn't do it, but,
things happen. There are things that happen as you're growing your farm, so your vegetables. But that is kind of a funny story, I got to tell you. I'm almost afraid to laugh. Some animal person will go, what do you mean that's not funny? I think it's hilarious. So what can you do? These things happen. So
these things happen, and I'm an animal lover, trust
of course
me.
You are.
And I love Bambi and all those things. And it's just that if you grow things from seed and you take such good care of them and they're finally flourishing, and then all of a sudden half of your persimmon tree is completely eaten off because of one deer. I mean, it's amazing what they can go through.
No, I know.
I mean, things that I had caged. I had tomato plants. Thank God they were kind of caged. I got this trick, the way to grow them simply, and I'm doing it. So the ones internally within this cage, the deer couldn't get to it. But, then my garden flourished.
So you're getting the word out there, sort of one blog at a time, one interview at a time, to get out there. I love the picture of you with your vegetables. It's actually a gorgeous shot. And not only are you beautiful, but the vegetables you're growing are just so, they're wholesome. The color is rich because you grew them organically in your yard. It's not hard to do. You can live in an apartment. Right?
It's not. And if you're going to grow in your yard, in my mind, that's the only way to do it. Why else would you grow? You can go and get conventionally grown vegetables and fruit in the grocery store. The good thing about also another great reason you should grow is because you can grow things you do not find in the grocery store.
Like what?
All kinds of different varieties of, broccolis and colors of cauliflowers and different, like the royal burgundy beans. They're fabulous. They grow just like a string bean. This is the time to plant them, by the way. And they are like an eggplant purple on the outside and acid green inside. And and kids will eat them. That's the wonderful thing, too. Like you said, you have children. They love fresh stuff, But anyways, going back to those beans, there's all different kinds and colors. And so you can make a salad that you're making. You can make a bean salad raw, of course, because those purple beans, if you cook them, they turn green. So there's such crazy things that happen in nature, and things that eat your plants. There's grubs. One day, when I didn't know anything, and I learned everything, by the way, online, so that anyone can do it as long as you can get online somewhere. And I would watch YouTube videos and stuff like that. So I captured this grub. I didn't even know what a grub was. And I don't know if you know what a grub is, but it's kind of like it turns into a beetle. But it's kind of looks like a milky color with a black head, and it rolls up in a ball, kind of like a doodle-bug.
Yeah, I know what they are.
Okay.
I didn't realize they cause all that damage, those little guys that roll up in a ball. So they do.
They'll eat all your roots, and they'll eat everything of your plant. So I trapped it and tried to find what it was, and I found out what it was, and I left it on my desk, and all of a sudden, like a week later,
oh no.
And like, what is it? And it had metamorphosized into a beetle. So it's like a science project gardening. I mean, all kinds of crazy things happen, and it's just, you learn so much. And then the thing that, I know I'm just rambling on, but the thing I love gardening so much for is it's made me be more conscious as a person for the planet, for what I feed my kids, for what I feed myself, for my health. And then, it makes me understand food. I got so excited about growing, I wanted to shout it from the mountaintops. And I had the opportunity to have my own talk radio show, and I did a iHeart radio show called Food Made Simple, Simply Growing, Cooking, and Simply Understanding Your Food. And I had experts on, and I learned so much about inflammation of your body, and it's all from food. I mean, you can get rid of different diseases. I had a food miracle segment. So it was so fascinating to talk to people where food actually changed their life. People that had, diabetes, they don't have it anymore, or thyroid disease, or cancer, lung cancer, just, interesting. So, not that food, maybe if you have a disease, sometimes it's not everything, but it's a lot. If you can get your body together again and just nourishing it with the right food, you have a much better chance of getting better at whatever you have.
I like that you're encouraging people, because I really believe that people will say, I don't have a green thumb. And it's not about that. I always say, even if you don't have space, start small, get maybe a pot and try and put something in there. Now, it's funny. I'm not terrific with seeds. I do a little better when I go to the store and they have the little teeny weeny little packs, and it's already starting to grow. They usually come in 6.
And you know what? For the new grower, anyway, the beginner grower, I would say just do that anyway.
Oh, really? Okay.
As you get into it, and as you're successful, and by the way, I'm not always successful. I mean, I have certain things that are great and certain things that don't make it. Like something, I went out of town, the agent just got to it, and I couldn't do anything about it, so I pulled it out. But going back to what you said, start with the start, so the 6-pack. Read the directions. Make sure if it says it's 3 feet, give it 4.
Really?
And if it's tomato plants get huge, and if you put them next to each other, they just crowd each other, and then they get sick. And so there's a reason why there's those instructions. But like I said before, when I first started, I really read the instructions and then did it my way, and then I learned that I should read instructions and do it the right way. So. Really, but it's been a joy.
Really quickly, I mean, come on, we can't let you go without talking a little bit for even a minute about your distinguished modeling career. You've been on practically every magazine out there. How many magazine covers have you done, Kelly?
You know what? I haven't counted, but I know a lot. And I did all kinds of magazine covers of Vogue, Glamour, Mademoiselle, Self, trying to remember New Woman, Cosmopolitan, and then all the European magazines with the same names, like Italian Vogue and British Vogue and all those. And I honestly, I didn't want to be a model, and it was kind of a fluky thing for me. I was a tomboy. I was not into fashion. My mother was, and I kind of fell into it because she started modeling at age 40 and decided to teach modeling at an agency, a modeling agency, and she was all about the deal, everything half price. So we have to do or wear. And so she got these not modeling, but self-improvement courses half off at the agency. And I went, and my sister went. And a photographer took my pictures, sent it to John Casablancas, and then he came over and asked me to come to New York. And I was
there
really
you go.
bummed.
Next thing you know,
no, I was really bummed.
Yeah, but you're so beautiful. Somebody would have found you somewhere. I mean, at a gardening shop or something. Somebody eventually would have found you.
At the gardening shop.
But well, it's true. You would have been found no matter where you ended up. And also, of course, you were with Rod Stewart, which everyone was always curious about, and you have a child with him. And now I'm getting a sign that I have to get off in a minute.
I know, it goes so fast, doesn't it?
I know. What would you say was sort of the most exciting part of your career, very briefly?
And as a model, I've worked with the greatest. You know what? It was about working with true
good
artists,
people,
like
yeah,
Lulu and Avedon, and going to the most spectacular places and not having to pay for anything.
That's true.
A lot of times you weren't on a holiday. I've been to Egypt, which was insane, and I mean, I'm trying to think. I've been everywhere. I've been to a number of places, but it was the people and being around. I really appreciate it now, because now I look back and I realize how creative those people were. They were the most creative people I got to work with.
When you're in the middle of it, you might not see that. And now look, you get to live out your life being the tomboy again and getting your hands dirty, right, in the dirt. Kelly Emberg, thanks so much for being on with us. I admire you. You're beautiful. And I love the work that you're doing. Get the word out there, especially with little kids. Maybe they can come home and, make a pot full of, together with, veggies and start growing and showing their parents what to do.
And I hope it changes the health of people, because the planet, and that's my reason to help is put the word out there. But thank you so much for having me.
Come back.
I really
come back. Okay. Thanks, Kelly. Have a great one.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Wow, I've admired her like forever. She's pretty spectacular. So beautiful. I don't know how you can be that gorgeous and so lovely and smart. So she's got it all. So anyway, everybody, thank you very much for being here for another edition of What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. Look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.